You need to get this 5-star for Wuthering Waves banner selector. If you're not informed, Wuthering Waves allows players to pick their own pity 5-star in their banner. There are 5 options available to you and you don't want to pick the wrong one. This is a big opportunity, right? Which is why today we'll break down each and every one of them and I'll let you know what's good and what's bad with them. Before we start, here's a disclaimer. I've gathered a lot of information from YouTube and Bilibili as well in order to put this together. I'll link every footage and information in the description down below, so if you guys are interested, check those out as well. And enough yapping, let's get on with the PowerPoint. Which 5-star to pick for a pity by your mom? In my opinion, the best choice from all the resources I've gathered, I think it's Verina. And I know I said enough yapping, but I have to yap about this. Disclaimer. Wuthering Waves focuses on player skill a lot, so you could have the best of characters or the worst of characters. How good they perform largely depend on the player, which also means you can pick anyone in the banner that you love if you play them correctly. If they play good, it's because you're good. If they play bad, you know what that means. And now allow me to break down why Verina is good. But point number 1, she's the strongest healer in the game. This is pretty straightforward. At the start of most games like this, there's not a lot of options for healer, right? So Verina is in this case the rare healer for Wuthering Waves. In a game like Wuthering Waves where there are constant combat wave after wave, having a healer just makes the game way easier for you. Which is why it's important to know that if you're just that good of a player, you don't need Verina. Just kill them without taking damage, right? You absolutely can do it if you're good enough. But she's not just a good healer though. Point number 2, here we have the outro skill and inherent skill. Let's understand a little bit about outro skill. Very simple. When you swap a character out, the character that leaves the field will do an outro skill because they're going out. Conversely, when a character comes in, there's always an intro skill because they're coming in. As for inherent skill, this means passive. Very simple. So with Verina, her outro skill and inherent skill, which is her passive, both can increase the damage to her allies or give an attack buff to your allies. This makes her really good because in a game like Wuthering Waves, after, trying it out myself as well, Wuthering Waves has a big focus on how you swap characters as well. It's not just have one guy tank all the damage and solo the whole wave alone. You can do that, but it's much more effective to utilize the outro skill and inherent buffs. So in this case, Verina, that gets her entire team more damage. Very good. And third point, she makes the game much easier. The simple explanation, well, she's a healer. Say you're farming an echo, say you're trying to beat a dungeon. Having a healer in your squad just means having a safety net. If you have skill issue, you got hit a couple of times, having Verina in your squad means just heal up and keep going. And on top of that, Verina has another inherent skill, which prevents your character from dying upon taking lethal damage. How it works is the moment your character is dying, you just don't die when Verina's in your team. Instead, you gain a barrier for that character. Simply put, it's a free revive. With all that combined with massive healing as well and buffing skills all in one, she makes the game much easier. If you're a person who doesn't want to think too much, Verina is easily your top choice. And finally, we have the point of she being the safety net for Danjin. If you don't know who Danjin is, she's basically the strongest 4-star DPS, but it comes at a cost. Danjin will lower her own health for damage. So you want a healer like Verina and a free revive as well to help Danjin survive. So if you're a free-to-play person, chances are you may not get those 5-star flashy DPS. Danjin is probably someone you want to use, and having Verina helping her out, very good. And that wraps up the top choice Verina. Moving on with the next slide, we have the joint top choice actually. I really can't rank these two apart from each other. We have Calcharo. To start with the first point, he is the strongest DPS in the standard banner currently. So of the 5 choice, if you want to go for the highest DPS, Calcharo's your guy. And my second point here explains why is it so. He has a really easy burst mechanic with good movement as well. Easy burst mechanic, let's break that down. With Calcharo, his best damage will come when he gets the ult. After your ult, all you really have to do is just spam basic attack. That's all you need to do. His kit will turn basic attack into another unique attack. Combos it with each other the more you do it, so all you really need to do is smash that basic attack, and that is where he does a crud ton of damage. You get a better idea once we compare the other standard DPS options, and you'll realize his mechanics is honestly simplicity, just power after power. And under this point, I also mentioned he has good movement. With Calcharo, his movement are sharp and swift. You have an easier time navigating and evading. Moving on with the third point, perfect synergy with Yinlin. Now, this is a really valid point because Yinlin is potentially one of the strongest characters in the game that's gonna come up as a limited banner. If you don't know what Yinlin does, she is a support slash sub DPS that helps out the electro element a lot, which Calcharo is of the electro element. So if you already know you're gonna pull for Yinlin, you can definitely just stack Calcharo instead of say Verina. Get yourself Yinlin and have both of them kill anyone before you even take damage. That will generally be the case once you get Calcharo with Yinlin together. And that is why I think joint first place, Calcharo with Verina. Both very good choices. And with the next slide, we got Encore. She's certainly not the top of the top choice within the 5 options we've got, but she's still a very good option. The first point, what does Encore do? She's a very simple, strong DPS. The reason why I would rank her below, say, picking Calcharo is because, well, firstly, with Yinlin, Calcharo would just go insane as well. And secondly, Encore Encore is a little bit clunkier with her movement, especially during the form outside of her ulti. You can do your combo attacks and sometimes she just cannot evade. Not to mention she has her charge attack as well, which literally makes her stand still. You have to take a hit during this moment, though you have damage reduction. She definitely feels a lot more static, but she packs her punch though, which is why we're our second point. She has mid-range attacks and really high damage output. If you're gonna ask me, math it out, Encore versus Calcharo, who's stronger? I honestly can't say. Well, firstly, I'm not in CBD3, and secondly, nobody has really done that, nerdy of a math yet, I don't think. But from what I gathered from Billy, which is the CN server, they've definitely tested Encore and realized that her damage output is honestly on the high end among the 5 options you get from the standard banner. Moving on with the third point, clunkier movement outside of her ulti, so she requires more play skill. I can resonate with this because I tried the level 1 Encore versus all the world bosses. Not a good experience. I say that, but I was still able to evade any bosses for up to half an hour. I beat the impermanence Heron with a guy's level 1 Encore just evading for 20 minutes. The clunkiness will not be that big of a deal if you just get used to playing a character. That will be the case for a lot of these characters. So when you are distressed, you're like, oh, I don't know who to pick, man. Don't worry, it doesn't matter. They don't get better or worse by your choice. They get better or worse by you. And the final point, in exchange for the clunkier movement, she's pretty tanky. And this is where her main source of bulk comes from, the dissonance state, which is her fourth circuit skill. Let's understand a bit of what fourth circuit means. On top of the health bar of characters, there's always this these volume looking bars thingy. This bar is like a separate form of mana in a sense. If you play whatever games that has a mechanic like that, it's kind of like a mana. You get them by, say, attacking the enemy. You get them by using your skill, all of that jazz. This volume bar will allow you to do your fourth circuit skill. With Encore's case, it's a charged attack while you have full bar. Once you do that, you get into a dissonant state where you can't attack. But during this state, you have 70% damage reduction. That is insane. Which overall means you have a character that's quite strong as a damage dealer. She packs a punch. She can take a punch as well. A pretty worthy DPS to go for if you want to main Encore. Moving up next, we have Jianxin. This one is a really challenging one. So I'll say she ranks third in the 5 options that we have. But then again, it's really important to know that it depends on your skill. Let's take a look at what she does. She's mainly, the first point, a support / sub DPS that thrives on switching out. So earlier when I talked about Verina, I talked about the outro skill, intro skill as well. This character has a pretty good one. She has an outro skill that buffs ultimate damage, which is at 38%, the highest in the game at the moment. So if you're going for a high damage per screenshot, well, Jianxin is pretty good at giving you the buff you need with her outro. In tandem with that, we have the second point, her E, which is a parry skill. This pretty much defines the worth of Jianxin. If you don't know how it works, here's how you do it. You have to hold an E and you'll be able to parry any form of damage the enemy throws at you. If you can parry in this way by using the hold E, the damage you do by releasing it is quite good. And on top of that, on a successful parry, you don't take damage. So by not taking damage, you return with a good punch. But here's the issue. If you fail the parry, your damage output is also quite low, which is why I think this character is really complicated. But let's move on though. We have another point. I got a lot for this character because I honestly quite like her. And I also think it's important to just fully understand her before saying she's just bad. We have Jianxin's fourth circuit, which gains her a fat shield and a heal. Unfortunately, this is only a shield for herself and a heal for herself as well. So you can't quite use her as a healer. That is what you're expecting of her. Which moves me to my next point. Her damage output is too slow compared to just switching to a full-fledged DPS. I mentioned earlier that Jianxin is a character that thrives on being swapped out because you want that outro skill that gives you the ult damage pretty damn good. If you're trying to do more damage, you also just want to swap her out for a DPS. Very logical. And under circumstances where you want to tank something, you swap her in, ignore damage with a parry, do some damage to the enemy as well, get your fat shield and heal, and then swap out to your DPS to just burst them down again. That is how you play Jianxin in a full team scenario. Not quite as a solo carry on her own. You want to swap her out with your allies constantly, and if you time everything right, she can mitigate a lot of damage for you. She even has an ultimate that could gather enemies in one place, so even better for you to just swap her in, mitigate those damage, do the ult, get your DPS in, do a lot of damage to enemies gathered in the same place. That is the essence of Jianxin. And the last 2 point, we have she being a strong solo character and a playstyle dependent character. She's a strong solo character because, well, clearly, she has a parry skill that just ignores damage taken. She has a fast shield for herself and a heal as well. All of these point towards her being a pretty strong solo character that does everything herself. So if you want to try some funny challenge, this is your girl. And we have the final point, playstyle dependent. This is because I would say if you're chasing for the meta gameplay, right? The meta gameplay involves a lot around swapping. And after swapping a person in, you want to also get their fourth skill and get their resonance skill in and just burst everything they have to offer onto the enemy. Get your forte circuit full, swap out again to someone else, do the same thing. That should be the meta of Wuthering Waves. Jianxin is kind of dependent on the enemy. If you get the parry, that's good. But if you don't get the parry, you'll be stuck with her just taking to the field without doing too much. much. Or keep going. The final option that you can consider is Lingyang. The straight conclusion that I gathered is that he is a DPS that is slightly behind his peers, at least for CBT3. Note that all of this could change, especially with Lingyang. The fact that people are saying he's not as strong as some of his peers means Kuro Games might just give him a buff by the time he releases, so it's important to still reevaluate once it releases. This is just to give you an idea. But the second point, overall damage output is just slightly less than his fellow 5 stars. This is from what I've gathered on Bilibili. There's a person who tests like all the characters with even copies of them as well, and what he's found out is he would rather use other DPS that's available to him than Lingyang most of the time, and it's mostly due to the fact that without the Lion Dance state, he doesn't do too much. So he has a good burst period, but off of the burst where he doesn't have his Lion Dance state, his damage output is really not that great. A lot of people say Lingyang's probably the worst option you can take, but I personally still say he's still a perfectly solid glacial character, which moves on to my third point, pairs well with the free Sanhua, which gets you 30% glacial damage bonus. I'm not gonna lie and say, he's better than Calcharo. I certainly don't think so, but I also think any game mode you want to clear, Lingyang can do it too. But for the fact that he simply isn't doing more damage, I cannot rank him higher, which is why for me personally, for a full meta list, you don't want to go Lingyang. To close on that, the final point, if you like him, get him. Play a character correctly, they will rarely disappoint. That's what I've gathered from a lot of players in the CN side and YouTube as well. But I would say instead of seeing this list as a power, like ranked power list, it's more like this is a convenience list. Hot One's the most convenient healer, very convenient. Calcharo, easy DPS, can be paired with like the Kami limited banner as well. Jianxin, a little bit dependent on the enemy, which means she's not as convenient as your other options. I think that sums up all I've gathered so far from a lot of other sources. Let me know what you have decided on after watching this video in the comments down below. And yeah, we'll be cooking more Wuthering Waves content in this channel. Subscribe if you want to watch those. As a final disclaimer, guys, all of these information could change. It's not official release after all. It's only based on CBD3's information that I can gather. And most importantly, the best of characters won't play well if you play them bad. Same for the inverse. A character that isn't the best can be played good if you play them good. And that'll be all from me. Hope I helped you out. Take care.